It was Ella's 16th birthday, and my Aunt Marcy had gone all out for her only daughter. Birthdays at Marcy's place were a staple in our family. Every year she'd host these massive backyard parties where everyone showed up, neighbors, school friends, and of course, us cousins. Aunt Marcy had a big house on the outskirts of town, surrounded by open fields and thick woods, a good 15 minutes from the nearest neighbor. I didn't think much of it, but that birthday, last November, would be one I'd never forget. It felt odd from the start, and not just because it was cold and windy, but because something seemed off with Aunt Marcy. Her house was decorated as usual with string lights in the trees and bright paper lanterns hanging by the back porch. The place looked like a party, but her face gave away that something was wrong. She was jumpy, glancing around at every little sound like she expected someone to appear out of nowhere. I chalked it up to stress. Pulling off these big parties wasn't easy, especially with so many people around. When I walked up, she greeted me with a hug, tighter than usual, and murmured, "I'm glad you're here, Adam." I laughed it off, not realizing how serious she was. Ella was thrilled, though, oblivious to her mom's tension. I noticed her glance over at her friends from school with this mix of excitement and impatience. She loved her family, but like any teenager, she wanted to hang with her own crowd. And eventually, they peeled off from the main party and disappeared into the woods. As the afternoon wore on, Aunt Marcy insisted we gather for the big family picture, a tradition she'd held since I was a kid. Everyone gathered around and she pulled out her old, bulky digital camera. Ella groaned, rolling her eyes but going along with it. When Marcy raised the camera and counted us down, she hesitated. She was staring through the viewfinder, her finger hovering over the button before she finally snapped it. She lowered the camera slowly, and her face had gone pale. She looked at the screen for a second before quickly putting it down. "All right, let's eat," she said, almost forcing a smile. I caught her glancing over her shoulder, though, a quick, worried look out towards the tree line. Something didn't feel right, but no one else seemed to notice. They sat down to eat cake, and that's when the question started. "Hey, Aunt Marcy, who's that guy in the trees?" The table fell quiet. Aunt Marcy forced a smile and said, "What guy, sweetheart?" Ella rolled her eyes. There was a man watching us from the trees. We thought he was one of the neighbors or something, but he just stood there, staring. The room got dead silent. Marcy just shook her head and looked down, pretending not to hear. After everyone ate, the younger kids went off to play near the house and the adults started cleaning up. As people started leaving, I offered to help Aunt Marcy clean up. She sighed with relief, and as we picked up plates, she pulled me aside. "Adam, can I ask you something? Do you think... did you notice anyone strange here tonight?" I laughed a little, trying to lighten the mood. Strange? Besides Uncle Pete with his karaoke performance? I looked at her, but she didn't smile. Her eyes darted to the tree line, and she muttered, "Maybe I'm being paranoid." We heard a noise, just a branch snapping, or maybe a raccoon, something small, but Aunt Marcy jumped. She put down the stack of plates she was holding and said, "I'll be right back," and walked off towards the back door. I kept cleaning up, trying to shake the uneasy feeling that had settled in my stomach. Aunt Marcy was gone for a while, and I started getting worried. Just as I was about to go find her, she came back inside, her face pale. "Adam," she whispered, "there's someone out there." My heart dropped. I didn't think she was serious, but the look on her face said otherwise. She grabbed her camera and flipped through the photos from earlier in the day. She froze on the last family picture, then handed me the camera. "Look," she said, her voice barely a whisper. In the back of the photo, almost hidden among the trees, was a figure. Tall, thin, blurred just enough that I couldn't make out any features. But it was clearly a man, watching us. We locked all the doors, checked on the kids who'd fallen asleep in the living room, and tried to calm down. Marcy kept glancing at the camera like she thought it held the answers, but all I saw was that eerie figure lurking in the background. I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the light, but something about it felt deliberate. It was nearly midnight when Ella came downstairs, rubbing her eyes. The police showed up within minutes, but by then, whoever it was had disappeared into the woods. The officers did a sweep of the property and found nothing, just a few broken branches near the tree line and footprints that led back towards the road. They told us it was probably some prankster or maybe a neighbor who'd had too much to drink. But the strange thing was, the next morning, Aunt Marcy found a note on her front porch. Just a plain piece of paper, with 2 words scrawled on it in messy, uneven letters. See you. After that, she canceled every party she'd planned. Ella's 16th birthday was the last one we'd have at Aunt Marcy's, and to this day, none of us know who that man was or why he was watching us. But sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I think about that note and I wonder if he's still out there, watching, waiting.